This is Concept 2A, and it's November 26th, 1975, and Mrs. Catlett is here to speak about how people changed Montclair.
Good morning. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to look back and see the changes that have occurred in the town of Montclair. When I came to Montclair in 1926, Montclair was very much like Mississippi. We had discrimination in the theaters, in the eating houses, in jobs. We had discrimination everywhere. But times have changed, and I'm very happy to see that a great deal of progress has been made. Because I have been affiliated with the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, I know that organization is responsible for some of the changes that have been made. When I did my practice teaching, I had one girl who was teaching the Civil War. Her critic teacher was there, and at the close of the lesson, Dr. Milligan took over. She said, "How many children here are 11 years old?" And at that time, every hand was raised. It was a sixth grade class. She said, "Children, there are a lot of things that are wrong. 10 years from now, you will be the voters. The voters can change the things that are wrong. If you know way down deep within your heart that something is wrong, I want you to stand up and speak out against it, even if you stand alone." I think the teacher got the message, because from then on, she knew there are things that were wrong in the town of Montclair, and she was going to do whatever she could to correct some of these evils that existed. The injustices perpetrated against us because of the color of our skins. I never shall forget when I was asked by a committee called the Interracial Committee. These people were living in Upper Montclair. A lady by the name of Mrs. Scott lived on Inwood Road. She wrote me a letter and asked if I would serve on a committee on discrimination in public places. I pounded out a letter on the typewriter at once, saying that I would be only too glad to serve. So I marched myself up to the Wellmont Theater the next evening and asked for a ticket for the orchestra. In fact, the girl gave me a ticket for the gallery before I opened my mouth. And I made her take it back and tell her that I would like to sit in the orchestra. I paid the extra money. She gave me the ticket, but the usher carried me over to the left-hand side, the last two rows, and stood there so I could not sit any place. The place was full of empty seats. I don't think 25 people were there. I think there must have been about 10 or 12. The show hadn't started. I told him I would like to sit a little farther front. He told me I had to sit there. I asked to see the manager, so the manager came. He wanted to know what the trouble was. I told him there was no trouble. I just wanted to sit a little farther front where I could see. The manager said, "You can see from all over the place." I said, "Well, if I can't sit farther front, I want my money back." I got my money back, but my hair went back. And I said, "We are going to see this thing through." The next night and when I got back, I told told this Mrs. Scott what happened. I said, "Now I'm going to carry my husband tomorrow night." She says, "Oh, we don't want any trouble. We don't want any trouble." I said, "Suppose the same thing happens. What are we supposed to do?" She said, "Brush on past the ushers and sit down where you want to." Yes, dear?
We have to pass the microphone so that we can hear Howard's question. We don't have to turn the camera.
What do the other people think about you being on the committee?
They evidently liked it. They wanted me to, they said for you to go in there and speak up and speak out. And they were very happy that I had the nerve, because it requires nerve to stand up and speak out against things that you know are wrong. And so I have been doing that and helping to break down the discrimination in the theaters, in the eating houses, wherever there were job opportunities, any place that the people were not served because of the color of their skin. I said, "No, we're not going to have this. We live here, we vote here, we pay taxes here, and we are people, we're citizens." Yes?
Please speak in the microphone. Get up there. Speak in the microphone.
Were the people on this committee all black, or what was the wish of the committee?
It was an integrated committee. The NAACP has always been integrated. We have national officers of both races. We have local, local members of our executive committee here in Montclair. We have black and white of both groups.
Any other questions? Tracy Jones, please stand.
What were your feelings when you had to sit in the last two rows before the first night that you went to the theater?
I didn't sit. I got my money back, and I knew that I wasn't going to sit there. I knew that if we had to bring it to court, then we would take it to court. I didn't sit in the last two rows, and I've never sat in the gallery unless I preferred it. But I know I wasn't going to sit there because my face was black.
Mark, stand up.
Did any of your friends think it was wrong to change some of the laws?
Beg your pardon?
Mark, would you again
Speak into the mic.
Did any of your friends think it was wrong to change some of the laws about black people?
No, the people thought it was a wonderful thing if you had the guts to stand up and speak out against things that were wrong. I didn't find anybody who thought it was wrong. The people that I knew, both white and colored, thought it was an excellent idea to start to break down these injustices that were inflicted upon you because of the color of your skin.
Chris.
Ford, speak in the microphone.
When you sat up front, what were the people's feelings and the manager's feelings?
Nobody seemed to pay any attention. We were just people. We sat there. Nobody paid any attention. And I do say this, in other communities, when they found out we were doing this in Montclair, they followed suit down in Trenton, down in Princeton, down in some of those other places. I know of an instance where a lady thought she was going to sit, they were going to make her sit in the back, and she just pushed her away and sat up front. The usher, she had a fur neck piece on, and the usher pulled on her neck piece trying to attract her attention to make her sit in the black section, and she wouldn't do it. She just, in the confusion, she sat down there where she wanted to sit.
I was going to ask, what year was the NAACP organized?
In 1909, as a result of a terrible lynching that occurred in the state of Illinois, a group of people in New York City under Mary White Ovington and under Mr. Du Bois from Atlanta joined hands and formed the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in 1909. So for over 65 years, this organization has been working and struggling for justice for all people. When I told Mrs. Scott what had happened and we were going up I was going to take my husband up the next night, she says, "Oh, Octavia, we don't want any trouble. We don't want any trouble." I said, "Well, who said you're going to have any trouble?" I said, "You asked me to serve on this committee. Suppose they do the same thing tomorrow night. What am I going to do?" She said, "Brush on past them and sit down where you please." So that's what we did. And then we went into the highways and byways. I went into the churches. I went to the social clubs. I went wherever people were and told them to go to the Wellmont Theater, to pay the extra money, whatever it costs, and sit downstairs and break up this discrimination once and for all. Yes?
When your husband and you went, did the usher try to stop you?
No, we pushed him out of the way. We pushed him out of the way and went on and sat down where we wanted to sit because we knew we were not going to sit in the last two rows, and we were not going to sit in the back. We were going to sit wherever we pleased.
Did your friends seem like to turn their backs on you or to think that you were trying to be someone special or you were really doing the right thing?
I think that they thought I was doing the right thing. I have gained a lot of friends in the churches and in the highways and byways. And I didn't select the silk stocking area. I went into the highways and byways and into the churches. No, I think that they thought I was doing a very good job.
How did your life change after this?
I found that I was a community person. I worked in the church, I worked in the YWCA, I worked in the NAACP, I worked until sometimes I think that when they were looking for a moron with a strong back and weak mind, somebody said, "Get Mrs. Catlett because she doesn't have sense enough to say no."
Well, you were talking about the theater. Well, were the other black people that were there, were they agreeing to sit in the back? Did they agree to sit in the back rows?
I don't think so. I think they paid the extra money and sat where they wanted to. If they wanted to sit upstairs, that was up to them. But I think the most of them paid the extra money and sat downstairs because they knew that it was wrong to be made to sit upstairs in the gallery.
Any other questions? Mark?
Come on, stand up.
The restaurant is there any sort of dispute? Did they try to make you leave?
No, they didn't make us leave. We took some of our white friends with us when we went to the restaurants, so we would have some witnesses. And we didn't all sit together. We said, you sit here and you sit there. And we had witnesses. We had white friends who were interested in breaking up this discrimination just as much as the colored. No, we had friends, and they stuck with us and stood by us.
Any other questions? Howard?
The manager of the restaurant, did he not serve you anything because you were colored or anything?
Evidently, it was the custom at that time. But after they found out we meant business and the colored people started going in there, they just served us. They took your money, and your money was as good as anybody else's. They took your money.
Well, was the food, were you satisfied with the conditions of the food and the way, like his reaction to serving you?
Yes, the food was all right. All we wanted to do was be treated the way everybody else was treated.
When he agreed to serve you, did he serve you in a manner that was good, or did he serve you kind of in a way that you didn't like to be served?
I think that's a good question, but there was no difference. We were served just the way everybody else was served in the restaurant and in the ice cream parlors also.
Mrs. Catlett, what years are we talking about, and how long did it take for the change to take for the whole town in terms of their serving blacks in public places?
Well, now, I'm talking about 1926, and it wasn't long before the discrimination in the theaters and the eating houses was changed.
Is there still any amounts of segregation or discrimination against blacks in this town still?
If so, now I can't say as far as housing is concerned. We have colored people who live in Upper Montclair if they got the money to pay for the house up there. As far as I know, that they can live wherever they please, and usually they take care of the property very well. There are some of the homes that they have bought were down on Orange Road, broken down quite a bit, and they moved in there and fixed up those homes and made them look very, very presentable. And you wouldn't know who lived there unless you saw some of them at the window or on the front porch or something. There have been many changes for the better in the town of Montclair since 1926. We never had colored teachers, and finally, I think it was 46 when we got the first colored teacher. But we've had a colored mayor, Negro on the Board of Education, a couple of them. We have colored teachers all over the place, and colored principals, and we have colored who work in the banks. And that's one reason why I say to the children, stay in school, get the training. The job is there for you. If you have the qualifications, you have the training. Because we certainly have them. I know a young man who's vice president of the bank, Montclair Savings Bank. And I know we have plenty of colored people in high places that we didn't have then. So a great deal of progress has been made. I want to say something about New York.
Okay.
Later. Oh, is that right? When I did my practice teaching in Glenfield School, the lady with whom I did my work was a Miss Weatherby. Not long ago, I ran into a young man who was one of my pupils, and you can imagine how surprised I was to see him and how surprised he was to see me. I came in from Orange on what they used to call the Toonerville trolley. And I had thought once of doing my practice teaching in Orange, but the supervisor told us that they couldn't get any teacher in Orange at that time to consent to take any of the colored girls. But I was told that I could do my practice teaching in Montclair, and it was the 3rd and 4th grade in Glenfield School, Miss Weatherby, and she was an excellent person, and I think she gave us some good training.
Howard, do you have a question? Yeah.
Like, were the white teachers jealous of you because there were usually more white teachers than black teachers?
I don't think so. We got along fine. We ate our lunch together, and there didn't seem to be any difference.
David and then Tracy.
Well, were the white teachers in Orange, how are they against having the black people teaching or sitting teaching with them?
Well, I wasn't in a position to know about accepting what I was told from the president of the college, because a bunch of us got together one day and asked the president why we couldn't do our practice teaching in our own hometown. Some of the girls came from South Jersey, Atlantic City and Asbury Park, but they couldn't practice down there. They had to come up here and do some practice teaching here. But as far as I could see, nobody paid any attention. Everybody was glad to see that you were trying to make something of yourself. And we got along. We shared our lunches. We ate together. We shared our lunches. And we just got along.
Tracy Jones is next.
The students in your class, do they seem happy to have you for a teacher, or were they sort of nervous when were they happy to have you, or were they scared, or were you?
Well, they didn't seem to be. I told them that I was like their school mother, and we were all going to work together, and we never had any problem. And we had the same thing in New York. I told them, you got two mothers, a school mother and a mother at home.
Well, I was going to ask you the same question. I was going to say, did the white kids, maybe show any reaction to you?
No. I wish I could think of the names of one or two of those little white kids that I had in my class at Glenfield School. I can't think of any of the names at this moment, but we got along. There didn't seem to be any difference. And in New York, my goodness, they invited me home for meatballs and spaghetti more than once, although I had a pretty tough time in the beginning. I don't want to forget to tell you about some of the things that happened to me. The man selected me from the list not knowing that I was colored. I had passed the examination because over in New York you took an examination, and I thought I'd prefer to teach over there since it was a little closer to home. I passed the examination and then was given a class down in in the lower Manhattan. He selected me from the list. He didn't want any Skis or Stearns or Steins or Bergs. He wanted an American. And when the American arrived by way of Africa, to say that he was slightly chagrined was expressing it mildly. And he told me that he didn't know whether I'd get along or not. And if I didn't, he expected me to see it and go elsewhere. But I told him the Board of Education knew I was colored, and the board, if I didn't get, all I was looking for was a fair chance and a square deal, because I didn't come there to fail.
When you taught in Glenfield, how did the parents' children think?
Well, I don't know. They all accepted me. I didn't have any difficulty, didn't have any question, anything.
Were there many black students when you were in your school while you were teaching at Glenfield?
Yes, quite a number. Quite a few children of color. Because you see, it was a colored neighborhood. There were some Italians there and a few Irish, but I don't know just what the percentage was, but there were a number of colored children there.
Were there any black people on the board?
Not in those days. No, all these other things have happened many years later.
Darryl?
Did your husband like this, you teaching these white kids, since he said he didn't like it?
Well, I told him that I had some very nice friends and of both groups, and I wouldn't want them to be insulted if they ever came to my house. And he likes them. He has a drugstore, and he has both colored and white who bring their prescriptions to him. Yes. We have a drugstore in Orange. He was the first colored pharmacist in Montclair. The first colored pharmacist in Montclair.
Where did he go to school?
He went to Howard University in Washington, D.C. That's where he lived.
Any other questions?
David.
Michael?
Were you one of the first colored teachers to teach in New York City?
No, I don't think so, because it was one of the colored teachers who told me. She said, Octavia, why don't you take the New York exam? You get more money over here anyhow. And she said, come on and take it. So I said, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm going to take it, so if I flunk it, I'll go back to Jersey. But I took it and passed it, and I didn't go back to Jersey. I went into New York in 1923.
Where did you go to school?
I went to public school in Orange, or the public schools in Orange, and then I went to what was then called Montclair Normal School, which was a teacher's college up in Upper Montclair.
How long did you teach in Manhattan?
I taught 38 years in Manhattan. I taught in 2 schools, and one school, I mustn't forget to tell you about that. That was known as Little Italy. They gave me the worst class, 42 kids, 5th grade, big, bad, overaged, and dumb. It was the first time they had ever had a colored teacher. So one boy stood up on the desk and cursed. Another one used the word nigger. I said, dear God, don't let me cry. Either they get me or I get them, and I've got to get them first. I did everything that I was trained not to do. I couldn't eat any lunch. I went through the neighborhood, and I found out there was a precinct down on Elizabeth Street, so I got the names of some cops there. I went down on Center Street. I found out there was a jail there, and I got the names of some policemen there. I created some relatives up in Harlem who were cops and detectives, and I reminded them that I had 5 brothers and never had to worry about anybody beating me up when I went to school, because if anybody laid a finger on me, it would be the worst Ethiopian-Italian war that ever existed. Now, who wants to fight? Let them step out. Nobody moved a muscle. Round 1, said I to Mrs. Catlett, round 1 of this bout, you have won. And I carved them down to my size.
Going on. No, wait a minute. I forgot my question, so you have to go on.
David will wait.
Yeah, David.
I was going to ask you before with the Glenfield School, when you taught there, were the people there? I mean, were the people there any meaner or nastier to you than you had maybe expected or whatever?
No, everybody treated me all right. I had no complaints whatsoever. I used to work in the lunchroom as the cashier, and they had a nice cafeteria there, and I served as the cashier in the lunchroom. I didn't have any difficulty.
Well, going off subject a little, I'd like to ask you, how has Montclair changed in your words?
Well, Montclair has changed in many respects, as I say, as far as the discrimination is concerned. In many, many, many respects, yes. But as far as jobs, job opportunities, and whatnot, yes. I still think there's work to be done, but it's not perfect. But I know when I compare what it was years ago with what it is now, I think the people have gotten a better understanding, because I think there should be understanding, peace, love, and togetherness. You've got to be together.
If you were making more money than a white teacher, like, were they mad or anything? Like, were they?
I don't think you made any more. I think according to your experience, you started out with a certain sum of money. For instance, way back there, you started, say, $1,500 was the minimum in New York, and then every year you had to show that you were improving yourself. You either had to go to summer school, or you had to take up a course during the year at one of the colleges. Now, if in New York you stayed in school till the 30th of June, you didn't always feel like going to summer school starting the first day of July. So many of the teachers took their in-service courses at Hunter or NYU or some of those colleges in New York City.
Well, going back to Little Italy, were any of the kids in your classroom, did they seem like they didn't want to disturb you, but they were being forced to, like by the bigger kids that seemed like they would push them around?
Well, now, when I got there, as I said, it was tough the first day. But after I let them know that I was going to be their teacher, and we were going to get along, we got along. They finally, and the children, the parents very often said to me, well, Miss Catlett, we're having a PTA meeting tonight. Don't go all the way home to Jersey. Come on over and have meatballs and spaghetti with us. I brought some of those children here to Montclair to see Montclair High School play Clifton High School. Mr. Fortunata, did you all know him, Butch Fortunata? Well, he was the one. He said, Octavia, you must be a very fine teacher. I said, I want the kids to see how you live when you don't live in New York City. And I brought those children over here to see Montclair High School play Clifton. Yes. Oh, yes. They were rooting for Montclair.
In all the schools that you have taught in, how many years have you been teaching?
In all, total, it was 38 years. 38.
How many years did you teach in Montclair?
Oh, I only did my practice teaching in Montclair. See, I didn't teach in any school here because after I did my practice teaching in Montclair, then I taught school in Princeton, New Jersey for 1 year. Then, while I was down there, I took the New York examination, passed it, and taught the rest of the time in New York City.
In your 38 years of teaching, how do you think schools have changed? Or have they changed at all?
They have changed a great deal. Now, there's one thing that I haven't been able to understand is how we can get to high school and not know how to read. They didn't do that when I came along. I don't say that, I don't know whose fault it is, and I don't know, but from what I understand, that there are, but I do see there are a whole lot of improvements and a whole lot of nice things in visiting the schools that they didn't used to have. But there are some things that I haven't been able to get adjusted to, because I know when we went to school, we knew how to count from 1 to 10 before we went to school. Our parents took an interest in us and made us know our ABCs, and we could count from 1 to 10, and you knew a lot of little things from home. But I don't understand why we can get to high school and can't read. Now, if that's the truth, I don't know, but I understand it is.
Do you think children have changed at all in 38 years that you've seen? Or do you think they're the same 38 years ago as they are today?
Yes and no. But to a certain extent, I think they're smarter in some respects. Well, of course, we have television and radio that we didn't have then, and they are exposed to those things. But to a certain extent, kids they like fun. They like they don't change in every respect.
All right. Now I'm gonna ask you something. I'm gonna ask you to compare back in the 20s and 30s to now. You know, the schools.
Well, they're more modern, of course, and there's a closeness here that you didn't see before. And the equipment, you have much finer equipment. I'm surprised to see some of the things that you have here. Yes, I think it's much better.
We have time for 2 more questions. Michael and then Tracy.
Do you think the schools have changed for the better or for the worse?
For the better. I would never let the schools down, no. There may be places where there could be some improvement, but I would say they certainly have marvelous equipment, and so I can't say that they've been for the worse.
Well, how have the different, I mean, as like from the young kids now, do you think they're getting more of an understanding of different things going on than in the 30s, the 20s and 30s?
Yes, I do think they're getting they have a better understanding of the things that are going on. I definitely do. Yes. And as I said before, television and radio have done a whole lot. But I still think the parents should take, I don't say here, but I think the parents must take an interest in knowing what their children are doing, encouraging them, letting them see what they're, letting the the parents should let the children know they're interested in them and what they're doing. I definitely do.
Thank you for coming, and we appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you, darling. This was a pleasure, and I've enjoyed every single minute. And this is an experience that I'll never forget as long as I live. And thank you for thinking about me. I think it's lovely.